好，大家好，又係凡斯。其實咧，上一條片同今條片咧就應該係夾埋一齊一次過睇嘅，所以咧咁短時間之內咧兩條凡斯片一次過出嘅。嗱，咁講翻少少先啊，呢條片個開頭咧其實我一早已經錄咗噶啦，不過咧我 delete 咗，再錄一條。點解咧？就因為咧上一條片咧有人問我話，其他咧搬運工嘅 YouTube channel 咧有人都係用你差唔多嘅片，咁其實咧係咪人哋抄你啊？咁我睇一睇啦，咁啊唔係，因為咧係人哋出早過我幾個鐘嘅。咁同埋咧其實咧好多嘅華文即係台灣啦嘅 YouTuber 咧都會同一個 pool 嗰度去揾一啲較為出名、夠人多人 share 嘅 interview 嚟講嘅。或者搬運翻譯啦，咁所以咧其實大家同一個 pool 入邊取材的話咧，咁就大家取出嚟嘅材咧，好大程度都係一樣嘅，或者係差唔多啦。咁所以咧就冇話邊個抄邊個嘅。咁不過咧華文媒體之中咧會講凡斯啊，會講美國大選嗰啲媒體咧，其實真係唔係好多嘅啫。即係如果以廣東話嚟講咧，就應該係冇嘅嚇。咁即係講下啲大新聞嗰啲會有啦，即係邊個參選啊，邊個贏咗咁嗰啲一定會有。咁但係咧選前呢啲嘢咧，香港就應該冇人做，台灣都係好少嘅。咁所以咧喺咁細嘅環境底下，大家都去上下 Twitter 上下Telegram 睇下邊啲片係多人 share 多人講，咁去取材的話咧，其實大家攞出嚟嘅材料咧，其實大家都差唔多。咁不過咧9成9嘅人咧都係就咁翻譯咗條片啦，係冇任何評論啊，或者冇任何深入嘅了解嘅。因為你睇 YouTube channel 咧，最緊要係睇嗰個人咧嘅評論啊，有冇啲獨特嘅見解啊。咁但係其實好多 channel 咧都係就咁 copy 條片加啲字幕或者加少少注釋咁啊 OK 啦，咁啊出街嘅。咁我唔係嘅，我喺所有嘅訪問之前我都會讀白一段先，令到大家咧易啲去代入嗰個訪問內容入邊啊。同埋咧可能有啲細節位大家未必留意得到嘅，咁我咧就喺片頭強調一次俾你哋睇，打定個底，等你哋慢慢睇，咁就好過咧突然間掉條片出嚟等你哋睇，睇完之後咧好似水過鴨背咁樣睇到啲咩，好似都唔係好清楚咁樣樣。所以訪問之前呢段嘅導讀形式咧，就應該係冇人會咁樣做嘅。所以咧留言嗰度咧同我講，喂，某個 channel 啲片同我咁似，我睇一睇，喂，完全唔似喎。佢就咁翻譯咗條片出嚟咁啊算啦，就咁擺上去，跟住冇任何導讀啊，冇任何即係俾大家理解啊，或者係有一啲注釋啊，完全冇嘅。所以冇話邊個抄邊個，就算有人抄的話咧，都係我抄人哋嘅，因為咧佢條片係出先過我。咁但係佢冇任何評論，翻譯咗條片咁就算。咁同埋再嚴格啲嚟講咧，其實我哋所有人都係抄翻嚟嘅。因為我哋大家咧都係同一個 pool 入邊睇啦，即係 Twitter 興啲乜嘢啊，美國人中意講啲乜嘢啊，有啲乜嘢內容呢排 hit 嘅，即係美國本土。咁我哋咧再取材出嚟，咁所以咧你見其實好多嘢都可能差唔多啦。咁其實仲有幾個 channel 咧係專係講美國大選嘅華文 channel，咁全部一次過所有嘢都翻譯晒出嚟嘅，即係無論大大小小嘅訪問啦，有冇用都好啦，有冇三跛都好啦，即係全部同你一次過翻譯晒出嚟。咁其實就係一個翻譯 channel 嚟嘅啫。咁你話有冇評論啊？係冇嘅嚇，zero。咁所以其實大家個取材咧係雖然係一樣同一個地方度取材出嚟都好啦，大家同一條片嚟噶嘛，訪問片大家都用嗰條啦，係咪先？咁但係咧大家嘅評論、大家嘅理解啊、大家點樣去演繹啊，其實大家都會唔同。就算就住某一個台對住凡斯個訪問，我都會睇唔同嘅評論員對佢呢個訪問有啲咩理解，有咩見解啊？佢覺得凡斯做得好唔好啊？佢嗰啲政策嘅方針有冇料到啊？即係我都會睇唔同嘅人對同一件事嘅睇法噶嘛。呢啲咧亦都係我想帶出嘅一個重點啊，就係咧你透過呢啲嘅訪問片，你睇到美國大選嘅情況係點樣樣啦？凡斯係一個點嘅人啦。唔代表 Donald Trump 或者係賀錦麗嗰邊咧係冇任何訪問，係其實係有嘅。不過咧個睇頭唔係咁多，因為大家咧都係講嗰套老掉鳥牙嗰套啦，即係講咗咁多個月都係嗰套啦。無論 Donald Trump 又好，民主黨嗰邊都好啦。咁但係凡斯咧都不停咁有一啲訪問係新嘅嘢出嚟嘅。咁所以咧美國本土入邊咧，即係如果你再講 Donald Trump 嗰啲政策咧，其實咧嗰啲美國人真係覺得哇咁靚嘅，唔該講一講啲新嘅嘢啦。咁新嘅咧就係凡斯啦。咁特別咧係凡斯點樣去回應嗰個Cat Lady 嗰個事件啦？咁我哋香港人啦，或者係華文入邊咧，其實就未必話好理解係咩一回事。咁因為咧凡斯以前咧即係未參選之前咧，就曾經講過一啲人就唔生仔，咁啊令到一個人口結構有問題啦，貢獻上嘅有問題啦。咁啲人咧就掛住養貓唔生仔，咁啊帶出咗好多社會問題。咁所以咧就好多人就攻擊佢啦。喂，咩 Cat Lady 啫？咁我哋依家唔生，可能將來都生咁，咁唔代表我哋唔生仔，唔代表我哋冇貢獻啊嘛。咁凡斯上一條片咧就講啦，喂，我只係一個講笑形式咁樣樣嘅啫嘛，大家唔好再喺度即係抽一句嚟講就咁去曲解我嘅意思啦咁樣樣。 嗱咁平心而論咧，我絕對唔係幫范斯，甚至乎咧我係踩緊佢嘅。點解咧？因為平心而論咧，呢啲説話咧其實就應該要過濾一下先講得出嚟嘅。咁同埋咧即係老老實實，當年佢講呢啲説話嗰陣時，佢都冇諗過自己係會做副總統候選人噶嘛。咁所以咧，如果俾佢諗翻咧，佢都會覺得即係自己當年真係戇鳩咗。嗱，講翻今段片，我點解會擺呢段出嚟咧？就係咧，上幾條片咧就全部都係大媒體噶嘛，大媒體嘅訪問。今次呢條片咧就一個獨立評論員對佢一個訪問。咁呢個獨立評論員咧都勁出名，係殿堂級教父咁嘅級數嘅，就叫做 Bill O'Reilly 啊。之前嗰幾個主持咧，有人出咗兩本書、3本書咁樣樣啦，但係呢條友咧出咗17本書，揸住2個碩士學位喺手，波士頓大學啦、哈佛佢都有嘅。咁無論你係美國人又好啦，加拿大人都好啦，你都一定會聽過一個新聞節目咧，就叫做 Inside Edition 嘅，即係咧新聞內幕咁樣樣啦。咁係一個好長壽嘅節目嚟嘅。咁佢咧就係主持人之一。呢位標兄咧做親咧都係大媒體嚟嘅，即係CBC 啦、ABC 啦，係乜斯密斯佢都做齊晒㗎啦。咁點解到最後咧佢會變咗一個獨立評論員咧？就係因為咧喺2004年開始啦，佢有一系列嘅性騷擾事件啦。佢冇俾人告得入㗎，佢冇坐過監嘅。佢係早於 Me Too 事件之前咧就已經唔俾人告緊性騷擾噶啦。咁但係即係又究竟係咪真係性騷擾咧？定係啲人勒索咧？又因為咧佢第一單 case 開始咧，其實咧就係告緊個女士咧，佢勒索佢。個女士唔係直接告佢嘅，個女士係勒索佢錢先，跟住佢報警佢話俾人勒索，跟住個女士咧先至告佢性騷擾嘅啫。咁美國人坊間點睇佢呢啲系列嘅性騷擾事件咧？就係咧有啲就應該係即係勞資糾紛嚟嘅，因為咧係要錢。係要索償嘅啫，咁有啲咧就應該係假嘅，咁但係亦都有啲嘢咧係應該係都係真嘅，因為咧到最後係庭外和解，俾錢了事啊。咁一系列嘅性騷擾事件咧，大部分咧都係冇肢體上邊嘅成分喺入邊嘅，好多時咧都係言語上啦。就例如喂，我覺得你今日條裙好靚，咁可能有啲女士咧就覺得係性騷擾啦。咁但係咧呢啲好主觀嘅，咁所以咧其實擺到上法庭咧就好難入得到罪嘅。咁到最後咧好多咧都係即係賠錢了事。咁霍士新聞同埋佢咧咁多單性騷擾案件入邊咧賠咗幾多錢咧？就係1300萬美金都唔叫賠嘅，庭外和解啦。咁但係和解得太多錢咧，咁霍士新聞咧就即係唔俾佢做算啦。咁所以咧佢而家咧就出嚟做自己一個獨立媒體獨立評論員。佢有佢自己嘅網站，有自己嘅 YouTube channel 嘅。咁雖然咧呢個標咧有性醜聞，咁但係咧真係喺新聞界或者係評論員界咧，佢係天花板嘅存在。咁所以咧佢依家咧都係撈得幾掂下嘅，同埋咧佢個影響力咧都係有喺度嘅。咁所以咧范斯除咗去大媒體度做訪問之外咧，都會去標興呢個獨立媒體去做訪問嘅。即係咧可想而知俾足面佢即係咧教父嚟嘅喎。咁佢叫我嚟做訪問，冇理由唔做噶嘛，係咪先？性醜聞嗰啲我真係唔知有定冇，因為咧我睇完嗰啲 case 之後咧，我都評論唔到究竟係咪真係有定係真係冇啦。咁但係我深信咧都應該係有發生過某啲言語上嘅有喺度嘅。咁唔好理佢啦。咁但係咧最重要咧就係佢唔係大媒體，佢冇嗰個媒體包袱佢唔使受限於左岸媒體嘅掣肘。咁所以咧你成個訪問陣間你會見到啦，佢係冇咁敵意嘅。佢有啲政策咧係唔同意 Donald Trump 嘅，咁但係咧佢係冇咗早幾次訪問片嗰種左岸思想啦，或者左岸媒體嗰種敵意我講得好小心，費事一穿橋因為咧今次個話題咧佢其實 cover 得唔多，雖然咧條片咧比較長，咁但係咧佢每個議題咧都會深入落去探討嘅，而唔係咧嘴巴上邊嗌交咁樣樣啦，即係好似上一條片咁樣，個女主持就係講喂。你顯翻啲移民咪即係拆散家庭呢啲太過膚淺嘅討論嚟嘅，好冇質素，好冇養分咁。但係今次個左膠程度咧就低好多啦。咁所以咧，范斯有好多機會咧去深入去講佢哋嘅政策或者Donald Trump嘅政策啦。咁主持人咧亦都係有料到嘅。佢無論係追問或者係搶麥咧，都係一啲有質素嘅做法啦，都係一啲有內容有做過功課嘅，唔係一啲侃侃而談嘅嘢。唔似得上一條片咧，即係技巧係有咁，但係內容就欠缺。咁你會見到咧，主持人阿標咧，其實相對嚟講比較中立少少嘅。咁點解我會話呢條片同上一條片咧應該夾埋一齊睇咧？就係因為咧有啲話題其實重複咗，不過咧深入好多嘅。就例如遣返移民問題啦，范斯係答得深入好多嘅。咁同埋咧到最後咧係講緊一啲點解 Donald Trump 當年推行嘅政策推行唔到唔係佢唔推行而係咧即係共和兩黨咧對佢咧都係有好大嘅敵意，阻止 Donald Trump 嘅政策上台。咁就算同一條政策都好啦，Donald Trump 嘅時代咧就推唔到。咁但係拜登年代咧，因為民主黨控制到個議會咧，所以咧就推行得到。唔係條政策唔啱唔係Donald Trump唔啱，而係咧啲人唔中意佢咁解嘅啫。 咁仲有庇護城市啊，咁點解啲左膠會咁希望起好多庇護城市出嚟收多啲難民咧？就係因為聯邦政府俾緊錢佢哋啊嘛，咁俾緊啲地方政府錢，咁啲地方政府咪好想收多啲難民，咁啊越收越多難民，嗰啲問題又唔處理，就好似而家英國咁樣啦。收多啲難民，咁聯邦政府就會批錢落嚟，咁批錢落嚟我哋咪有錢使咯，係咪先？即係呢個係惡性循環嚟噶嘛。咁所以咧今次嗰個議題咧其實深入得討論好多嘅。咁仲有啦，即係頭呢條片未必有講嘅，就係咧今次係有講呢個烏克蘭事件。咁個主持人咧都係撐烏克蘭嘅，兼且咧佢覺得嗰個普京咧係精神有問題，係黐線佬嚟嘅。咁呢個咧就好睇凡斯點樣回應嘅，因為成日嗰啲左膠媒體咧都會唱，喂，Donald Trump一定係會割地賠款啦。其實咧但係即係斷章取義，講一句唔講一句啊嘛。咁凡斯今次一回應都幾好噶，佢都係絕對撐烏克蘭嘅。咁但係咧佢有樣嘢咧就唔同意個主持人，就係咧。喂，北約嗰啲國家咧本身係講好咗自己會有2% 嘅 GDP 嚟做軍費噶嘛，咁但係長期以嚟咧都係依靠住美國科水，咁然之後打仗啦，喂，大家原來個倉又唔夠貨啦，嗰啲生產力又唔夠啦，嗰啲原材料又跟唔上，後勤又唔足嘅喎，即係根本就冇準備過，完全咧就諗住攤大手板問美國佬攞錢，跟住咧然之後就懟落去烏克蘭嗰度。咁凡斯咧就話。我係撐烏克蘭咁，但係咧唔同意全部嘢要美國佬埋單嘅，因為係北約嚟噶嘛，大家都要共同承受噶嘛，大家講好咗都會出軍費噶嘛，咁冇理由美國佬出晒，跟住你哋又翹埋雙手噶嘛。咁佢再帶出另一個重點咧，就係喂，佢要歐洲咧搞掂烏克蘭，因為烏克蘭近歐洲啊，冇可能美國佬全程埋單噶嘛。咁美國有一個好重要嘅敵人就係中國啦，要係歐洲對付俄羅斯，然之後美國專心咧對付中國。咁所以咧，今次嗰個訪問咧，雖然咧就係獨立媒體做出嚟咁，但係咧嗰個深入程度咧係比嗰啲大台啦、嗰啲左膠媒體咧係深好多嘅，即係唔係同一個層次嚟嘅。咁另外咧，成段訪問入邊咧，其實有個位啦，即係我唔劇透啦，有個位咧就係講到咧，開頭咧就主持人就未必係好同意阿范斯所講嘅嘢，咁但係講下咧到最後，咁跟住咧主持人好似俾阿范斯說服得到咁樣樣咯，佢就話咧好似係拜登咁樣做，其實應該係會被彈劾先至啱噶。咁不過咧依家咧民主黨咧又控制咗議會啦，咁所以咧就唔會有人去彈劾拜登噶啦，即係好似轉咗軚咁樣樣，好搞笑呢個位置。咁我見到凡斯個反應，你都呆一呆咁哦耶！我唔劇透係邊一 part 啦，大家可以咧睇一睇即係個主持人同佢嘅交手啊。今次係幾另類嘅，因為咧我雖然之前3條片咧都係大媒體抽出嚟啦，咁但係咧各有特色嘅。咁今次最大嘅特色咧就係咧，佢唔係大媒體嚇，佢係獨立媒體，咁就可以俾到啲新嘅咧大家睇噶嘛，係咪先？跟住最後一 part 咧就梗係嚟睇佢個留言啦。咁呢個咧就唔係大台啦，咁所以咧佢個view 數咧係少嘅。咁但係唔緊要啦，最緊要咧睇下美國人自己嘅留言啦。咁好多人咧都話喂，俾阿凡斯繼續講落去啦，唔好成日好似唔俾佢講成日要打斷佢咁樣樣啦。let your guest speak 咁樣樣啦。咁有好多人咧都係讚阿凡斯嘅嗰啲對答好好啊，邏輯思維好好啦。咁凡斯亦都展現咗一啲excellent manner 啦，咁就係即係俾人不停咁打斷都好啦，佢都可以好順暢咁去handle 到阿 Bill 嘅啲攻擊啦。喂，阿 Bill 你 never let him finish a sentence，即係咧成日唔俾佢講嘢咁樣樣。嗱，其實咧你睇主持人係咪真係全程咁樣斬斷佢講嘢咧？其實佢個程度咧就冇上一條片個女主持咧搶咪搶得咁嚴重嘅。不過咧今次嗰個訪問形式咧係視像訪問。唔係面對面真人咁樣訪問，咁所以咧搶咪咧，雖然係少咁，但係咧影響係好大嘅。嗱，大家可能唔知啊，我哋做直播兼且係兩邊一齊同步的話咧，其實好多掣肘嘅。如果你一邊講緊嘢，你去搭聲的話咧，你係連自己講乜嘢或者對方講緊啲乜嘢都唔知啊。咁但係咧，如果面對面互相搶咪咧，其實你會聽得到對方講咩噶嘛。咁但係如果係視像搶咪的話咧，其實凡斯咧，你見到佢好多時咧都係會唔搶啦，即係俾個主持人講。因為如果佢繼續搶落去凡斯會搶翻轉頭的話咧，佢係會連對方講啲乜嘢都聽唔到嘅。反而個視覺效果咧就係咧，兩邊都唔知自己講緊乜嘢，又唔知人哋講緊乜嘢，佢係好難處理一件事嘅。呢個咧就係視像訪問一個最大嘅缺點，因為你係透過喇叭、透過支咪等佢講完嘢，跟住你先至回應啊嘛。咁但係如果唔係現場聽你講的話咧，其實咧我係要等嘅。我唔等完你之後咧，我咁樣答咪咧，除咗個 delay 之外咧，其實咧係會打斷晒成個對答嘅。所以你見上一條片咧，凡斯其實係要搶翻咪轉頭，呢啲咧係即時嘅辯論嚟噶嘛，係會搶翻咪係好正常，對方亦都會搶翻咪，亦都好正常，咁先有火花噶嘛。咁但係今次嘅視像對話咧，如果係有一方係堅持係咁不停咁搶的話咧， 咁啊好大鑊，係完全傾唔到嘅。咁范斯咧就寧願自己斷咗，都俾佢繼續講。咁但係咧都有少少搶咪，咁但係呢個情況唔係咁嚴重。不過咧喺一個視像訪問入邊咧就會無限放大將個缺點。咁除咗呢個小問題之外咧，其實成條訪問咧，我都覺得佢係幾好嘅，兩邊都做得幾好嘅。你見到咧都有啲人讚嘅 excellent interview 啊，兩邊咧都係知道佢哋做緊啲乜嘢啦A class act 啊。另外又係 excellent interview 啦，呢啲咁留言區入邊咧好大程度咧都係讚嘅，即係兩邊都讚啦。同之前嗰幾條大媒體嘅訪問嘅氣氛啦、環境咧，嗰啲留言區咧其實完全係另一個世界嚟嘅。所以咧呢條片咧都想大家去睇一睇，感受一下。好，去片。
So I appreciate you taking the time out there in Nebraska. We're talking to you early in the morning, but you look good. All right, I'm a mess, but you look good, Senator. But thank you for taking the time. This is a policy interview, but before I get to that, 6 months ago, your life was fairly organized as far as the Senator of the United States is concerned. Now, it's 180 degrees different. Since you got the nod for VP, give me two things that have surprised you about the whole process.
Well, the first thing that I have to point to, Bill, is having a Secret Service detail is just a wildly different thing. I think for my kids in particular, Bill, we have a 7-year-old boy, a 4-year-old boy, and a 2-year-old girl. They can't just like walk out the front door and go to their friends' houses anymore. It's just a slightly different world, right? So I think that has been the biggest just adjustment for the family. I think the really big positive surprise is just you see the country in a totally different light as a VP nominee. And what I mean is, I've run for Senate before, did it 2 years ago. You drive around the state of Ohio, which is, of course, my favorite state, in the back of a used Subaru. Now I'm flying around in a plane going to every corner of the country. And you just, whenever we're on the ground, I try to drop into some place that's local, a chocolate shop, an ice cream shop, a deli, just to sort of talk to people and see what it's like on the ground. And it's just a totally different way of looking at our country. It makes you realize, Bill, we have the most beautiful country in the world. And I always try to remind my fellow conservatives, my fellow Republicans, there is a lot for us to be grateful for and a lot for us to be hopeful about. The problem with this country, it's not our workers, it's not our natural resources, our incredible beauty. The problem is leadership, and that's why we're doing what we do.
All right, so let's get into the policy stuff. So one of the big issues, as everybody knows, is the open border, which has caused an amazing amount of pain for the United States of America. And we're talking about drugs, we're talking about fiscal issues, cities going bankrupt, chaos, crime, on and on and on. So Donald Trump, and I think you subscribe to this from my research, wants to deport a massive amount of people, millions of people. So my analysis says that's almost impossible. How could a Trump administration deport millions of people?
Well, Bill, before we get to that, I think it is important to set this up and say you have to stop the bleeding, first of all, right? That's the most important thing. And the thing where I think most Americans actually have near uniform agreement on is we've got 25 million illegal aliens in this country right now. Let's not add to it, right? Let's actually re-implement deportations, re-implement President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, stop this process of catch and release, where for your viewers who don't fully appreciate this, what this really means is that you come into the country, you're asked by your government to come back maybe 10 years down the road, maybe 5 years down the road, but it's effectively a blanket amnesty policy for anybody who says that they're persecuted, even if they're just a traditional economic migrant. That is one of the biggest reasons why we have this wide open border.
True.
So stop all that stuff, right? That's first.
Okay.
So you're right. Okay, so once you stop all that stuff, now you've got 20 million, 25 million people. You have to figure out what to do with them. And I guess the way that I think about it, Bill, is, it's kind of like being asked, well, you have a sandwich and it's 10 times the size of your mouth. How do you actually eat the whole thing? And you take it one bite at a time, right? And I think you start with the million most violent, most criminal illegal alien elements. There's probably, of the 20 million, there's probably 1 million who've committed some violent crime. That's an estimate, but I think it's pretty close to the truth. You deport them first and you focus on them first. And then I think you go down the list from there.
Are you going to have a special federal task force set up to track down violent migrants?
Well, I think you start with the people, again, who have committed crimes, right? So they're going to be in some local database. Obviously, not every violent criminal is easy to track down, but a lot of them are because they're in the eyes of some local law enforcement.
What if they're in prison, though? Would you take them out and send them out, or they serve their full sentence and then you kick them out? What do you do?
You know, I think it depends, but my attitude would be send them back to their home country, let their home country imprison them. Because one of the biggest problems with our local budgets, Bill, and the problems caused by illegal aliens is, you know, it costs a lot of money to jail illegal aliens.
Sure.
It costs a lot of money to school their children. And it costs, of course, a lot of money to provide medical care. So I think get them back to their country of origin, especially if we're talking about that violent, hardened criminal element. And then I think, look, you are right, Bill, that there are going to be some people where it's very hard to find them. But I think that there are a lot of people where it will be easy to find, and you have to be willing to deport these people if you're going to have a real border policy.
Okay.
I mean, let me
but
just
you're
give
going
you
to have to go through. You're going to have to go through the federal court system to do it, because the ACLU is going to file lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. But that's okay. I mean, I want to just get your vision about what to do. So then you have, I put the number at about 15 undocumented migrants who are law-abiding people. And have you and Donald Trump talked about a process for those people? Are you going to make them register? What are you going to do to find out what their circumstance is?
Well, I think one other just additional thought here, and it's responsive to that question too, Bill, is we can actually do a very good job of deporting illegal immigrants if we just make it harder for them to work in this country in the first place.
So you'd have to get Congress to pass a law that punishes employers who hire illegal aliens. It's not going to be easy to do that, particularly if the Democrats control one house on Capitol Hill. All right, so
Bill, it's not going to be easy. I agree with you. It's not going to be easy to do, but I think it's important to do, Bill, because if you if you really want to have a battle with the Democrats over who respects and represents American workers, you've got one party that's trying to make it harder to hire illegal labor and undercut American wages. You've got another party that's fighting that effort. I think that's a fight.
Did you ever think about why the Democrats want the open border? Because they clearly do. The Democratic Party clearly wants an open border. They do not want any standards of who enters the country and who doesn't. Have you thought about why they want that?
You know, I have, Bill, and I don't think you have to think that hard because the Democrats are very open about this. I mean, if you look at Chuck Schumer's floor speeches or go back a few years, you know, what Joe Biden was saying on the floor of the United States Senate, they explicitly want to grant large numbers of illegal immigrants the right to vote. And they think that they're going to vote for Democrats, and they think that's going to permanently make Republicans a minority in their own country. I think this is a very real driver of what you're seeing at the southern border.
That they want to load up the demographics and change the state like California's changed in Arizona and New Mexico. All right, let's get on to sanctuary cities. So you have been very explicit here in saying it's simple. This is a quote from Senator Vance. We're going to end sanctuary cities. So how are you going to do that?
Well, look, why do sanctuary cities exist, Bill? Because they get a lot of federal money in order to serve illegal aliens over American citizens. This is really about cutting off the money spigot here. You can't, of course, wave the magic wand and
you and Donald Trump would say we're not sending any federal money unless you cooperate with ICE. That's pretty simple.
I think exactly. That's exactly right.
And you guys are going to do that? You're going to implement, because in his first 4 years, Donald Trump did not do that.
Bill, I think that we have to. And I think that to defend Donald Trump in his first term here, Bill, you have to remember, one, a lot of the Republican Party was fighting him on his immigration agenda. I think that'll be much different the second time around. And the second thing, Bill, is you mentioned the ACLU lawsuits. A lot of the litigation, a lot of the immigration enforcement was stalled in the first few years of the Trump administration. And he still got a lot done, to be clear, but he could have gotten more done if the courts hadn't been fighting him. A lot of those court cases have actually worked through the system in a way that's favorable to immigration enforcement. A very fundamental principle of immigration enforcement law is the president gets to do what he wants to do. He has broad discretion to enforce our immigration laws.
And I think Joe Biden demonstrated that.
That's exactly right.
Joe Biden wouldn't enforce the law. It's an impeachable offense, in my opinion, but, because the Democrats control the Senate, they didn't bother. All right, let's get on to another interesting statement that you made. This is Senator Vance again, I want to expand the child tax credit. I want to stop those surprise medical bills. All right, now the expansion of the child tax credit, That's obvious. But you agree with the Democrats on that. That's not a bad thing. All right. But when you say, I want to stop surprise medical bills, then you're going into the private medical sector and telling them, this is what Kamala Harris is spouting all the time. Well, we're gonna price control food. We're going to price control big pharma. That's not going to happen because they're private concerns. Do you have a way that you could stop surprise medical bills?
Well, so first of all, Bill, just on the child tax credit, to give Donald Trump some credit here, it was actually his legislation back in 2017 that first expanded the child tax credit for the first time in a very long time. And of course, Kamala Harris fought that legislation every step of the way, in fact, voted against it. So I don't think that we should give the Democrats credit here when they say that they're pro expanding the child tax credit. The one big opportunity in my lifetime where it happened, Donald Trump did it, Republicans supported it, and Democrats fought it every step of the way.
But stopping surprise medical bills, I don't think you can do that.
Well, here's the way that I've thought about this, Bill, and we've actually worked on legislation during my time in the Senate to work on this. Take for example, a situation that I've experienced just in my family, and I'm a very lucky guy. This is not the sort of thing that broke the bank, but it could be for a lot of middle-class families where you go to the hospital, your wife delivers a beautiful baby, you're excited about it, and then through the process of dealing with all of the shots and the vitamins and the things that are necessary for that new baby, you accidentally, and sometimes through no knowledge of your own, go to an out-of-network provider for a particular service, and you get home with your beautiful baby a few weeks later, and you get a shockingly high medical bill. I think that there are actually real solutions that exist to be able to solve that problem. The question is, when you have these surprise and totally unforeseen circumstances, who should bear the burden of that? The the insurance companies or the American family?
But what would the
I
law
think that
look
it's totally
like?
reasonable.
What would the federal law look like to stop that?
Well, it would basically say that if through no fault of your own, you engage in an out-of-network medical provider in order to provide benefits for your family, you don't get stuck with the bill. The insurance company and the hospital should bear the burden of making sure that all of the insurance stuff is worked out.
Okay.
Not a new mom who gave birth to a baby 3 hours before and is probably exhausted. Really, it's just a question of where do you put the burden? I think it's reasonable, Bill. Look, I believe in
it's
markets,
certainly
and I certainly
reasonable,
believe.
but writing the bill, I wouldn't want to write that bill. But
We're working on one right now in the United States Senate to that effect.
And I will look at it, of course.
Please do.
Let's go on to another quote. Senator Vance, we are going to stand up to soft on crime prosecutors. So now the federal government is intruding on the state and local governments, and you know you can't do that. So here in New York, where I am, we have the worst, Alvin Bragg.
Yep.
The worst. You can't touch him. Can you?
I disagree, Bill. Go ahead.
No, how are you going to get him? Because listen, if you got away, I'm right behind you. He's killing the city.
Look, I think there's a carrot and there's a stick you can use with some of these local prosecutors. And again, you have to talk about the purse strings. That's where you start with this, right? So look, if you're a local prosecutor, police officer brings in the bad guy, and you let a person walk scot-free who committed a violent crime, then I think the federal government should be willing to say, look, we're not going to give you all of those law enforcement resources that exist in the federal budget. We're going to be a little bit more willing to use some discipline in how we disperse those funds.
Okay, so
you're not going to use them to actually bring in the bad guys. Yeah, that's exactly right, Bill. But one other point on this, Bill, because I think it's very important. When I talk to police officers and I say, what is your biggest problem? What are the ways in which these soft on crime prosecutors make your life harder? The thing the police tell me, it's fascinating, Bill, is they're easy on the bad guys, but they use the full force of their office to really go after the police officers who are, of course, prosecuting the bad guys. I think that we have to ensure that our local police officers have the immunity necessary that prosecutors have, that judges have. We got to give our police officers proper immunity so they can do their jobs. We protect them from these ridiculous lawsuits, and we actually make it easier for them to do their job.
Now, let's go to an issue that you and I disagree on, but maybe you have a new take on it, and that's Ukraine. So I'm a historian, and you know that, and I know what Putin's game is. It's obvious what he's done in Georgia, Belarus. He wants to restore the Soviet Union. and he's willing to kill hundreds of thousands of people to do it. There is only one force on earth that can stop this man. That's the United States. And we have NATO to help. Okay. So I am a person who says you got to stop Putin in Ukraine. And that means you got to arm the Ukrainians and you have to give them humanitarian aid. Am I wrong?
Well, here's where I disagree on some of where you're at, Bill. Is I don't think that we can arm Ukraine indefinitely, because I think that what it has ultimately done is, one, it's subsidized the Europeans and allowed them to not take responsibility. And it also, there's no real end in sight to our present Ukraine policy. So let me sort of start where we do agree. I don't think that Russia should have invaded Ukraine. And we have to give some due credit here to our good friend, the former president, where everybody accused him of being in bed with Vladimir Putin. But when Donald Trump was president, Vladimir Putin didn't invade his neighbors. He did, of course, during the administration of Obama, the administration of Kamala Harris, and the administration even of George W. Bush, of course, a fellow Republican. So let's give some credit. I don't think Vladimir Putin would have invaded Ukraine if Donald Trump had been president and we had some deterrence established.
I agree with that assessment.
Not saying you disagree.
There's some magic between Putin and Trump that I've asked Trump 15 times what it is, he won't tell me. But
well, I think it's that he's tough, but I also think that Donald Trump is smart. When he engages with people, Bill, he actually talks to them and engages in real diplomacy. But let's go back to, like, what do we do now? Okay, so we're in the situation now. What do we do now? Okay, so here, every European country says that they're going to spend at least 2% of GDP on defense. Most of them haven't actually honored that commitment. So what needs to happen, in my view, is that NATO, Europe, needs to focus on Russia and Ukraine so that America can pivot to the real challenge for us, which is China. And I don't think, Bill, unfortunately, that we have the manufacturing capacity because we shipped our industrial base overseas. We don't make enough artillery shells. We don't make enough Patriot interceptors to support the war in Ukraine indefinitely. So we have to ask ourselves, where can we focus? Where do we have to focus? And my view is, let's focus on China and let's force the Europeans to carry more of their share.
I hope you guys will rethink this thing. Trump knows he can't say publicly what he's going to do. But I think this is really vital, because this Putin, he's really a mentally unbalanced man, in my opinion. You cannot let him win there. But I'm confident if Trump got in, there would be some détente there. Last question for you. And
I hear you, Bill, and I understand. Just one final point on that, if I might.
Sure.
I think certainly Russia's in a world of hurt. I also think Ukraine is in a world of hurt. And again, we have to ask ourselves, can this go on indefinitely? I don't like the Biden administration approach of basically saying, we're just going to keep on doing this thing however long it takes with no strategy, no end in sight. I think Donald Trump actually does have a plan to bring about an end to the conflict. Of course, you're exactly right. He's not going to telegraph it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, he's not going to telegraph it. But I think that Donald Trump is actually the president of peace and stability in the world. We're going to see that when we reelect him president.
Hopefully, because stability in the world is paramount, and we got to stop these people. All right. Last question. This is a little bit lighter. So you and Oprah Winfrey were best buds. All right. And Oprah, on the TV last night at Democratic Convention, she wasn't mean to you. She mocked you about the cat lady stuff, which, believe me, is about as inconsequential a statement as I've ever seen. I knew what you were trying to do. You were mocking liberal feminists who, don't really respect the family unit. However, Oprah's up there. She helped your tremendous success, literary success. Did you see it? And what is your reaction to it?
Well, first of all, I don't know if it's tremendous literary success compared to you, Bill. I think you probably sold more books than anybody I've ever talked to.
Believe me, your book's a classic. And to get Amy Adams into your movie, I mean, my God. I mean, Opie did a good job, Ron Howard. But
he did.
Amy was lights out in that movie. But Oprah helped you and liked you. I mean, you guys had a good relationship. And now there's Oprah up there. I don't know what Oprah actually said. I was trying to figure it out, but she was in Mississippi and then she's someplace else. I don't know. But what was your reaction personally to it?
I try not to take this stuff too seriously, Bill. When you enter the public arena, people are going to attack you. I wish Oprah all the best. And I wish, more importantly, that Oprah had talked about what Kamala Harris has done instead of what Kamala Harris will do. My criticism of yesterday is the entire theme of this was about what Kamala Harris, her vision, what she will do when she's been the sitting vice president for 3.5 years. We have higher inflation, higher housing prices, and lower wages because of it. These people have got to stop talking about Kamala Harris as if she hasn't been the vice president for 3.5 years. So I'm going to keep it, whether it's Oprah or anybody else, I'm going to keep it focused on policy. I wish Oprah all the best, but I want her candidate to lose because I want the American people to thrive.
All right. And just keep this in mind. Vice President Harris has been on the federal scene for 7.5 years, 4 in the Senate. No bill got even voted on that she was associated with, none. And then as vice president, as everybody knows, she backed Biden 100% on all those failed policies. So that wasn't too bad, right? I know your people were saying O'Reilly's too mean and all this, but that wasn't too bad, was it?
Not bad at all, man. Again, I'm honored to speak with you. I've been a big fan for a long time, so hopefully we can do it again.
All right, Senator, anytime, and my best to the president. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks, Bill. Take care.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on X. Look for @Bill O'Reilly.